I don't think there's any vote to be taken.
Right, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, there's no vote to be taken. Aisha.
What's this?
Well, welcome everybody. Our agenda isn't too long this evening. The main event is 270 West 96th Street. Is that right? Or I don't have the address in front of me.
That's the main event? Yeah.
Yes, but also if Richard gets in, he wanted to talk a little bit about scaffolding. So that will be item number 2. So I guess Chris, is it? And Alex, who's going to present for you guys?
Yeah, so it's myself, Chris Grant, Alex Fettner is on, and we also have Brian from Langen and Sufyan from UAG. UAG is our construction manager.
Wonderful.
And we have Hal Fettner here as well in the background.
You guys are really like giving us the full red carpet for an item that we don't even have to vote on.
We're happy to provide an update.
You asked us, and I told you I would give you the absolutely. So, but we're gonna let I'm letting Chris and Alex run the show.
More,
Okay.
more people on your side.
Slow down.
Okay. Whenever you guys are ready, Richard, maybe you want to put yourself on mute till you get in.
Great. Well, thanks all of you for the time and inviting us to speak. We are really excited to continue our progress and to give you an update on the progress we've made and what we have coming up and moving forward. And really just, thank you for continued support. And going to let Chris Grant now walk through a few timing updates and slides on where we are.
This person lives here.
Yes, thank you, Alex. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We're excited to be providing an update. It's been a busy year since we completed ULERP in 2020, which was right around the start of, it was March 2020. So start of COVID. We've been very busy since then, completing our construction drawings and going through the various approvals, which we're happy to announce we have all but one at this point. We have a partial building approval with 2 objections that we expect to get through or finalize in the next week or so, and to have the final full building approval next week. Just to take a step back, for those of you that are not familiar with the site, we're talking about lots 60, 59, and 57 here on West 96th Street. So it's 266 West 96th Street through 270. And for everyone familiar, this is currently the Roy Wilkins owned building, the Salvation Army, and the building, the old substation owned by the city and controlled by HPD. So together, these are the development site, and the plan calls for a 171 unit residential building. It will be 100% rental, with 40% of the units affordable housing. And through the process of ULERP, we had agreed to provide affordable units up to the area median income, ranging from 27% AMI up through 120. In total, there's 68 affordable units. And as someone mentioned earlier, there is a micro housing component in this building. On the lower floors, the first 5 floors, there will be 80 micro studios, which is something that we, along with HPD and the city, we're excited to develop as part of the city's initiative to provide more smaller housing, to provide homes for more people around high transit areas. So being so close to Broadway, and the 96th Street subway station, this became a location that the city was interested in kind of testing out the smaller micro homes. And then the remainder of the units upstairs are your traditional 1s, 2s, and 3-bedroom units. The building's 23 stories. And on the ground floor, we have some community facility space.
And Chris,
Yeah.
do you want to just update the community on the update from last night regarding Salvation Army?
Yeah, so late breaking news, the Salvation Army, a couple of weeks or a month ago at this time, announced or told us that they were no longer interested in keeping their space on the ground floor. So we made a deal for the Salvation Army to sell us back that space. So as of this morning, that deal is signed and the Salvation Army will no longer be taking space on the ground floor. So instead, we will have a full 8,000 square feet of open community facility space on the ground floor.
And can you just mention again how big the micro units are?
So the micro units range in size from, on average, they're about 300 square feet.
Okay.
Most of them will be fully furnished with beds and tables that automatically fold up into the wall. One thing that we learned coming to the community board last year was that there was a need in the community for some housing for seniors, and some of the seniors might not be interested in the automatic bed and built-in furniture, and they may want to bring some of their own furniture to the unit. So we have set aside a few of those studio apartments without furnishing built-in. So going back to the approvals, right now we have all but the full building approval. We have our demo permit in place. We have our abatement approvals signed off. So right now we're targeting a closing of around the first week to second week of November. And at that point, we would roll right into abatement, followed by demolition. And we can go through, we have a schedule that we want to show you that summarizes the whole construction schedule. But first, we know that the community is very interested in the brownfield cleanup program. The project has been accepted into the brownfield cleanup program. So we have Brian from Langen here tonight, and he's going to walk through what that means and a little bit more detail on the plan and schedule.
Good evening, everyone. So I just wanted to give a quick rundown. Thanks for the introduction, Chris. So essentially, I kind of want to pick up from where you probably left off about a year ago. At that time, we were anticipating, we were in the early stages of the brownfield program. I just wanted to kind of fall up to speed on where we're at with the brownfield program right now. So as of right now, we have done a full-scale investigation of the property, and we have provided all of that data to the DEC and Department of Health. And we've also prepared a work plan, which is essentially a work plan for how we plan on cleaning up the property. And it has been reviewed and approved by both the DEC and the Department of Health. What we found when we did the investigation was that despite there being, some historic uses of the site that would potentially contaminate the property, the contamination was relatively minimal. And our cleanup will focus on basically removing all of the soil from beneath the site, so that there will be essentially no contamination remaining on the property. And as such, the DEC and DOH have determined that the property is what they call not a significant threat. And what that means is that there is very little potential for anything from the property currently to further impact the environment surrounding the property. But as a precautionary measure during construction, we will be implementing what they call a community air monitoring program, which is essentially just a program where we have we have stations surrounding the property that monitor air quality and any potential air migrating off the site. And it's just to ensure that at all times the air quality in the vicinity of the property remains at normal levels. I don't anticipate with a site like this with such minimal contamination that there'd really be any concern, but nevertheless, we'll have this running at all times during the site cleanup. And once the cleanup is completed, what we'll do is collect, well, in this case, there's no samples to collect because we're removing all the soil from beneath the property down to the bedrock. But once everything is complete, we will document this in a final engineering report that will be provided to the state DEC. It'll be reviewed by the Department of Health and reviewed by the DEC. And they will essentially provide what they call certificate of completion in the program. And based on the current schedule, we anticipate that we would receive that certificate of completion in calendar year 2022 by the end of the year. I think that's about it, but I'm happy to answer any quick questions if there are any.
Did you say how long you thought it would take to remove the soil and clean it?
Yeah, so this one's, the volume off the top of my head is pretty minimal. It will be happening in conjunction with the development of the property. So there's like to the naked eye, you wouldn't distinguish cleanup from construction, but I would anticipate for this property to be in the vicinity of 3 months, probably, give or take.
As part of the demolition, almost?
It would come, so it would be abatement, demolition, then soil excavation, and then foundation construction. So it would come after demolition.
Okay.
And one thing to note, sorry, Jeanette, is once we finish demo and go under, we're only going roughly 5 feet deeper than where the current buildings are.
Okay. You have a significant grade change regardless, so I guess you don't have to go too deep. Mark, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. I'm sorry if I'm anticipating the presentation. The soil that will be removed, where will it go?
So as part of soil disposal, what we have done as part of our investigation process is to characterize all the soil. So we know the chemical constituents of all of the soil. And that data is used to basically what we call is finding it a home. Oftentimes in certain situations, some of it is beneficially reused in New Jersey or other construction sites where the soil is not contaminated. Where the soil is contaminated, depending on the level of contamination, it can be taken to various treatment facilities or disposal facilities. As I mentioned, and they can be any number of places, but they're all licensed. Any soil removed from this site will be taken to a pre-approved licensed facility where that facility has reviewed all of the analytical data from the soil to confirm that it meets the acceptance criteria, whether it's going to be used to grade out a parking lot for clean material or it may be incinerated. It all depends, and that comes as part of the period where we go through the contracting of the work. So the final destination hasn't been established, but it will ultimately be disposed of at a licensed facility, and most oftentimes that's in New Jersey.
Thanks.
Paige, you have a question?
Yes, I had been involved with this project when it was still owned by the MTA as an adaptive reuse. And I remember going in it. You've talked about the subsurface abatement because of the fuel that may have leached into the soil. But the other problem with this building was that it had broken windows and a lot of bird guano. Is the plan, Alex, to still reuse or incorporate some of the stone details on the building? And if so, is the bird guano, is there an abatement plan for that? And where will the salvaged material be stored until it's reinstated?
So we're using the cartouches from the existing building. And I'll get back to you with further information on where they'll be stored in the meantime.
Okay, and they will be cleaned as well, but cleaned in a conservation way, not just, 30.
Yeah,
Pound
Paige House here,
pressure.
Paige House here. So we're using the same restoration group that we used when we did 1212 Fifth Avenue, where we restored some very old terracotta, and we used a group called AWR, where, the cartouches will be removed, they will be cleaned, they will be labeled and numbered so as to then know how to put them back in, and then they're being incorporated into the facade of the new building.
Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And Melissa?
Sorry, I was distracted for a moment, so apologies if these were answered. Did you say you guys had a closing date with HPD and a construction start date? And then my other question is, around the community facility tenant, since Salvation Army is not wanting to take space, just what are your thoughts on the use of the space, assuming it has to stay a community facility? Any thoughts on the types of tenants that you'll be seeking?
So closing date, we were aiming for the first or second week of November, and construction will start almost immediately after. In terms of a new community facility, tenant, no direct thoughts yet on who that might be, but it will be something community facility related.
Yeah, I think some of the more popular community facility uses are medical, daycare. So we don't have anybody or haven't started those conversations yet, but those are the type of uses that generally fit into the community facility spaces.
Okay.
I'm going to call on.
I hope it's not going to be for dog grooming.
No, I don't think it will be for dog grooming.
Yeah, maybe we can revisit this conversation farther down the road, just because that was a part of the kind of package when I went through ULURP, and something the community was, I think, pleased to see included. So it'd be good to discuss.
Okay.
Melissa,
I'm
it
gonna call
has to
on
be-
Rich, but is there
Melissa-
more of the presentation?
There is.
We have more on the presentation, but Melissa, I'm not sure I understand. The space is zoned community facility. It can't be anything but community facility.
Yeah, that I understand.
So what's the, I'm not sure I understand. What is that we're gonna change the community facility?
No, I mean, just honestly, I don't know that we need more health offices space that aren't like an FQHC. So if we can be helpful in making suggestions or matchmaking for something that fits more community needs, that's fine.
Well, we're happy to listen. Look, life changed this morning with the Salvation Army.
Understood. I'm not.
And with that, let me just address, I think Mark, somebody was texting about, it's not that we gave the Salvation Army money. The Salvation Army made a decision that they didn't want to be here, in that, what they pay there with minimum wage and everything else, they made a decision on their own that this was economically not feasible for them anymore. And they're going to take their money and probably rent a space somewhere in the area. They're not giving up on their mission, but they, at the same time, they were sitting with a valuable asset that they decided they'd like to convert to equity for themselves. So this is not us, this is the Salvation Army's decision to sell it to us. I will also address that the NAACP, your comment about, I think Black people don't need help.
What?
I'm reading the comment.
Oh,
On
okay.
the chat, okay? I'm reading the comment on the chat. The NAACP is taking this money and it's going to the community trust, where it's then going to be distributed to a number of different charities, because basically they're winding down the Roy Wilkins Center as a whole. There's only 2 or 3 members who are still alive. So there are going to be a number of different beneficiaries from the money from the NAACP or the Roy Wilkins.
I have another, sorry.
Well, wait, let's go with Rich. He's been waiting patiently, and then we'll go to you, Paige. Or do you still have
I
another
have a
question,
hand up
Melissa?
also.
We have several slides as well. If you'd like,
Yeah.
we can go through the remaining 4 or 5 slides and then open it up for questions.
I think it makes more sense to let them finish because he may answer some of our questions.
It will be very brief.
Rich, did you have a question on the remediation or?
I don't. I just had a general question. I agree. It makes more sense for them to finish.
Okay, we'll choose you first going forward. Let's continue with the presentation.
Okay, so as Brian mentioned, the BCP will follow demo and abatement. So after we close, the first stage of construction is to start abatement, which should be anywhere from a couple of weeks to 1 month, followed by about 3 months of demolition. After that, that's where the brownfield cleanup process begins, along with excavation and supportive excavation foundation, which should bring us through August of 22. After that, the remaining construction of the superstructure and the fit out of the interior space will bring the overall schedule to just close to 30 months in total. So by March of 24, we have the full substantial completion. A couple of notes on the site safety plan and logistics of the site during construction. The last time that we spoke with the community board, this was a topic of interest, so we wanted to make sure we address that tonight. Currently, there is a bus stop in front of the site, and you may have noticed this week that the bus shelter has since been removed. The bus stop sign should be removed this week, and the remaining existing bus stop west of the site will remain.
Excuse me, the bus stop west of the site was really more a bus layover, meaning that will be the new bus stop?
I want to get back to you on that. I think that that's true, but I would want to just double check with our construction manager that's been handling this.
If it is true, could you find out where the layover is going to be? Because there are always 2 or 3 buses just sitting there, and there's not enough room if you eliminated your site from the bus stop for a layover. And it would be very interesting. It would be of importance to us to know where the layover is, because, as you know, traffic in that area is horrendous without this construction. So,
Richard,
Absolutely.
Wait,
I think for now that-
wait. Everybody has their hand up, so I interrupted. I'll let you finish your slides, then we'll go back to questions. Or
Okay.
take questions now about the bus, the construction plan.
And we have someone from our construction manager on the call, so we can also come back and address this with more detail.
Okay, so let's finish the presentation, then go to questions.
Okay, just a couple of quick notes on the site safety during construction. The first stage is SOE, supportive excavation. During that stage, the sidewalk in front of the site will be blocked with a concrete barrier to prevent any pedestrians from entering the space in front of the site. There will be plastic barriers creating a pedestrian walkway in the street directly about 5 feet out from the site. And there will always be a flag person there directing traffic and making sure pedestrians are safe. The brown area here that you see is overhead protection. So our neighbors that have outdoor space directly adjacent to our site will have some protection during construction at this stage. And you see that expand as construction moves on. During foundation, it looks very similar to SOE. And then during superstructure, once we come out of the ground, you see the overhead protection expand over the pedestrian walkway. the concrete barriers that are lifted to allow access for deliveries during construction. And you see an expansion of the overhead protection and netting as the building goes vertical. And that was really all we wanted to get through. I know that there's a lot of questions, so we can open it back up.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. One, I see that this fellow on the chat, Mark Friedman, is posting all this stuff, and I just wanted to clarify that the Salvation Army on the site currently is just a 2-story thrift shop. It's not social services; those are elsewhere. But Rich, we said, was going to be the first question, so I'll start with him, and then we'll go through the group. Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, thank you. And it's picking up on what he just said. I know when this was presented last year, there was talk of how this is going to block 96th Street, which of course is like the major artery going through our neighborhood. And we're concerned about the traffic implications. And I believe that you had said you'd be getting back to us with more information about just what the traffic impact would be. For how long will you be blocking lanes on 96th Street? And what's the plan to make sure that this doesn't cause massive disruptions to our neighborhood? Especially a tragic night a few years ago, there was a fatality in 97th and West End because of the impacts of traffic being diverted. Within an hour of that, there was another fatality on Broadway and 96th Street because traffic had been diverted. And I'm really worried about what the impact of traffic is going to be if you're blocking 96th Street. And if people are going to be going onto side streets, and if it's going to cause massive gridlock and endanger community members.
Yeah,
So we've worked out this plan with Department of Transportation and gone through all of their protocols, and we'll be following the same plan that the building directly next to us at 2551 Broadway did during their construction or their ongoing construction.
Did that answer your question, Rich?
No, it didn't. Can you tell me, like, for how long will lanes be blocked? Will you ever be blocking both of the eastbound lanes on 96th Street? What hours would they be blocked?
Yes,
So,
Stephen, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, Steve from UAG, if you're on.
Or Sufjan?
Yeah, I can answer that. So for the good duration of the job, it's only going to be, if you go back, Chris, to the logistics plan during the foundation and the first early stages, as you can see, there's minimal impact during the foundation anyway. There's no long closures. The only closure we're going to have is the pedestrian lane or the parking lane, if you will. And then during the superstructure for the first 7 floors, I would say the next lane of traffic will be taken, so we wouldn't have any 2 lanes at any given moment. DOT, as Alex has mentioned, DOT has only given us what the next door job site has been given, which is a couple of lanes.
Have you coordinated with the MTA, because there's a bus stop and buses often park there?
Correct. We did, that's part of the coordination. So to answer the question that was asked earlier about the bus stop relocation, and if you go back to that slide, Chris, the layover area is going to be the new bus stop that was in front of the HPD building. And then the new layover area, it's suggested, it's not confirmed by the TA yet, but in our correspondence, they're suggesting to move that to the north curb between Broadway and Amsterdam, if you go further east.
Oh, in front of the bike shop and plant shed. The old
Probably in
one.
front of the Citibank, I believe, in that,
Right,
in that
right.
corner.
On the eastbound side.
That sounds concerning. I mean,
It's not an ideal situation, I'm sure, but it is temporary. I'm sure having the layover on 97th Street isn't ideal either.
no, definitely not.
Let's just go through the other questions. Peter?
Yeah. This block between 95th and 96th Street and Broadway and West End has a lot of projects, recent projects on it. They may be coming at different times, but there's several in construction now. Would it not make sense for you to show a site plan with all the buildings, all the new buildings that are proposed and in construction, as well as yours? It seems to me it's the equivalent of an R12, or it's a very dense site, and for good reason, because there's a wide street to the north and a wide street to the east. But I think for our committee to understand what's being proposed here, it would be good to have a site plan that shows the entire development of that block. Not that we can change things, but I think we and the community need to know what's about to happen.
I can't do the left. It's missing things.
I think Peter raised a good point. We know that the construction on the corner there is really causing a lot of impacts. And are you assuming by only showing your pedestrian area that that construction will be finished and the sidewalk will be repaved and usable during your construction?
No, we're making no assumptions as to the plans of 2551 Broadway or any of the other projects on the block or in the neighborhood. We can really only speak to our project, but we have been in communication, as much as possible with other owners and developers in the neighborhood to try to get a sense of their plans and work together to make sure that we're helping each other and communicating. I know that 2551 Broadway is far ahead of us and will be complete while we're under construction. The other project that we're aware of that could be coming up in the future and that we really don't have information on and can't speak to would be 720 West End Avenue. But we really can't speak to the plans of these other developers, and we wouldn't try to represent what their plans are in this presentation.
Fair enough, but if in the field they have a temporary walkway that's punched out from the sidewalk, and we assume that you'll adjust your plans so the pedestrians have a continuous flow and aren't sort of coming to a Jersey barrier and then have to turn around and go back?
Absolutely. I mean, we would always, if there was some type of adjustment to any on either side of our site that impacted the pedestrian walkway, we would never leave the end of our pedestrian plan into the street or into danger. That it will always be continuous and safe, and that's something that we would adjust if the circumstances changed around us. And assuming, yeah, go
I
ahead.
don't understand why you can't do a drawing that shows everything on the block. It's not rocket science, it's happening. And we as a representative of the community board would like to see what the future is of this very dense block. And to see only pieces of it is not telling the whole story.
I agree with you, Peter, but I do think that each developer is only responsible for their own site, and that maybe that's a request we should be making to DOT and buildings to approve the plans.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I've been an architect for over 60 years, and often it's the architect that has to be the force to make something like this happen. And they may not be required to do it, and it's not something that the city is demanding, but we as a community board should ask for it. This is a huge development, and it has an enormous impact on the Upper West Side. And to see only piecemeal stuff at this point is not right. I think somebody has to step up and show what's happening on this block in its entirety. And that's not difficult to do. It's not like several weeks of work. It's gathering information, it's doing a site plan, and then presenting it to the community, which is us.
Let's go continue with questions first with people who haven't spoke. Louisa? You're
Unmute. Louisa,
Sorry
unmute.
about that. I did. Sorry about that. I agree with Peter because this company, the Fetner company, has been very, very amenable to our wishes and concerns about community and community reactions. So I do hope they'd be able to do that. And thank you also, we had discussed at great length a year ago, the 80 micro studios. And I was wondering, could you actually tell us the number of the ones that have the beds and tables kind of locked in and the ones that are open so that elderly people can bring their own furniture? What's the breakdown of those 80 micro studios?
So that's still under discussion with HPD.
This is an HPD decision.
Can you move
Why?
furniture in and out so that if the demand is for furniture, you put it in. If it's not for furniture, you remove it?
No, it's built in.
Is it built, well, can you build in after the building's constructed? In other words, nobody wants to bring their own furniture, so you're gonna add some furniture to otherwise bare rooms.
Yeah, you know, we heard you loud and clear a year ago on that issue, and we've reminded HPD over the course of the project that this is something the community wants, and we need to still arrive at that number of how many we would set aside. But yeah, to your point, Richard, once the furniture is built in, it's difficult to remove, and we wouldn't want to install and then take it off. So it's something that would have to be determined beforehand.
But you could leave the room bare and then install if the need arose.
Exactly.
Okay.
Fortunately, we're probably at least a year and a half from the point where we're furnishing the interior space. But this is something that we will continually remind HPD about, and we'll keep you posted on the actual number that would be set aside unfurnished.
Okay.
We appreciate that. The reason, as we had discussed before, it's really about the demographic that you're attracting. One is college students who will come and go and be transitory, and the other would be older people, elderly, who are part of the community and need a place to stay, to live.
Thank you. Roberta?
Thank you very much. And I wanted to thank the Fetner Group. They've been very good about coming and meeting with us often. I just wanted to remind you that the school on West End Avenue, we've had several accidents crossing the street, especially on the west, from south to north on the west side of 96th Street. There's a crossing guard in the morning and there's a crossing guard in the afternoon. We've tried to have a bump out on the south west corner of the street. Unfortunately, DOT won't allow us to have the bump out unless we have an organization that will help agree to clean the street when school's not in session. So I don't know if this is something that this building could do. A couple of the co-ops in the community have not been able to do it. I just bring it up. If it's something you can do, that would be wonderful. Just bringing it up.
That's a really good point, Roberta. Unfortunately, though, if they're pushing so I guess, is the MTA bus stop just going to be relocated during construction and then it's going to end up back further north?
Yeah, so the bus stop will be relocated during construction and will move back to where it is. Sometimes the bus does do a layover on 7th Street on the north side of 97th Street, where it turns to go between Broadway and Weston Avenue. And I think
we raised the issue of the bump out
right
about a year ago. And my recollection is that the Fetners looked into it and said that they could not get insurance.
I don't know if they did. I know the co-op.
No, Roberta, this is Hal Fetner speaking. We did try to, but since the bump out is not in front of our asset and is in front of the Stoll organization, there's no insurance company that would insure us. I'd have to bring my staff to go onto the Stoll organization and maintain that space, on their site. So we cannot get insurance for that.
I just brought it up because we've also asked the city to allow this, that a community group be allowed to adopt the bump out without insurance.
And I would be happy to help support that.
We would love your support. That would be great.
I would happy to help support that, but Fetner can't take that on our own because then I cannot, I'm naked on insurance. I do also, if you don't mind, I would like to address the pedestrian and the school traffic, pedestrian traffic in the schools. And Sufjan, are you still on?
Yes, I'm here, and I can answer that. I mean, in our coordination with DOT and MTA, we had extensive conversations, and our focus was 100% the safety of pedestrians in the school, especially our proximity to the school. So that was all considered in our conversations and whatever they gave us in terms of permits. So that's definitely a priority for us, and I'm sure that's the same for the Fetner group.
Thank you very much, and I will reach out to DOT again, and if you can be of help, that's great, because we would like to not have to have insurance and not have to have a sponsor for that bump out.
Thank you. Richard,
Yes,
have your hand up. Did you want to?
I had a couple of questions about the closure of the lanes. I think the last time we met, or one of the times we met, you said that you were planning to use a crane which would not be located on the street, but would be within the building site. Is that still the plan?
Chris, you want to cover
We
that?
Sophia,
what
Yes, if you
guy,
take that.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. So Chris, if you don't mind going to the logistics. So just to answer you, Richard, as you can see, the crane is located where the sidewalk is shown on the sheet that you're looking at right now on the screen.
Okay, it's not in the street.
For the good portion of the foundation, I would say, and even to the early stages of superstructure, it will be on the sidewalk. It'll only be halfway into the street when we need to get to higher elevations.
So you did not adopt what they did at 91st Street.
Richard, we tried to get early on in the process, the crane in the back of the building. Sort of show, but it turned out not to, no, a little bit to the left, but or whatever. But it along that dotted line. But it turned out not to be feasible, especially because of the construction to the east, meaning 255 Broadway. It's what's called a blind pick. We'd be picking off the street, but since you had 255 Broadway, DOB in the site safety plan that was prepared by UAG, which is Sufjan, DOB was not agreeing to the concept of putting the crane in the back.
Well, if when you build the superstructure, you have a crane halfway into the roadway at 96th Street, that is going to not only eliminate one lane of traffic, but it's going to make it very difficult.
So Richard, we are not taking up any more space in the street than what was taken up by Broadway to the east of us. It's the exact same amount of space. We're just using it differently. We're using it differently than the way Broadway used it.
Okay, and the next question, which stems from that, is where will trucks unload and load?
Sufjan?
Yes, so Richard, as you could see on the screen, it's the same concept.
I have troubles. All right, so it's inbound. It's in,
right, it's like
it's within the site.
Correct. I mean, for the good duration, it follows basically where the crane is, but for a good portion of time, it'll be within the site with less impact.
Okay. And do you anticipate a backup of trucks that go back into the?
Well, honestly, logistics, they're gonna change, they're gonna alter based on the conditions, but for the majority of the time, we anticipate having forward, I would say, mobilization for these trucks and then backing out. That's the plan for now. But as you know, construction is always predictable to a certain point.
Understood. That's it for me.
Okay, a couple people have second questions. We'll do those quickly, then we'll open it up to the public. Paige?
Just a few things. With this image up, right now you have a construction swing gate that comes into the pavement. But in your previous slide, you showed that the bus stop is going to be removed to where the little guy with the flag is going to be using that as a bus stop. So how are you going to control the pedestrians not to use that component part of the site? And wouldn't it be better to try to relocate the bus around the corner? Because what we've experienced on, I think it's the project on 84th Street in Broadway, the trucks have to keep moving and drive around the block, which means that you're going to be stuck in traffic going south and then have to navigate a narrow street and then come back up going north on West End Avenue. I'm concerned that we've had complaints before of being able to protect pedestrians, because there are times of day, particularly with the school and special events, where it's impassable. And I see this as an accident in the making. So that's my first question. The second one has to do with the little pockets now that will be created, the two that are the most worrying ones for maintenance, potentially for the tenants on the, I guess it's the southern side where you have the green roof protection. Is there a way that you will be able to maintain those from your side of the property there, and also in the other little setback on the Broadway side?
There were a couple of questions. Yes, I'll try to recollect and remember. So in order, I think the first one you've asked about the bus stop relocation, that's basically dictated off by DOT. Again, we were given that based on our coordination, and they feel and we feel that that's the safest way to do it. In terms of the pedestrian and the safety, this is again.
Can everyone go on mute, please? Could everyone who's not speaking go on mute?
Yes, there's terrible feedback
Yeah.
somewhere.
Thanks all.
Okay. So talking about, I was referring back to the question you had about the pedestrian. Again, we can assure you from both our side and the Fetner Group, the safety of the community is our utmost concern and interest. We're gonna have to make sure we have flagmen, as you can see on the sheet here, and that's the role of a flagman. He just coordinates the traffic, oversees safety, and it's regulation that's dictated by the city as well. So we're going to stay within the norms of the city, and again with an extra even caution that's beyond what's required.
Yes, but can I offer that you need to change the curb and put a concrete slurry so that the trucks can go to the pick point and deliver their goods, unless they're going to hoist them over the pedestrian track, which you have now moved into 96th Street. It's a very congested site that's quite busy with people moving east to go to the subway.
No, understood. There's no question an easy feat, and we know it's really congested. All the concrete trucks deliveries will be within the site, far away from any interactions with the pedestrian or the community.
I know, but you're moving the bus stop further towards West End Avenue. So there's a conflict there with people congregating to get on a bus or at the bus layover. And yet you show that as the swing gate for normally when you have a congestion site like this, you have an sort of an on ramp and off ramp. Yes, it takes up more of the sidewalk, but at least it's safer because the trucks the pedestrians never have an opportunity to have to cross in front of those trucks.
No, agreed. But and then by default, if a bus is there, a concrete truck wouldn't be there. So we wouldn't have the two conditions at the same time.
I hope you're right. Life doesn't have a way of working out like that. But I just throw that out there because we've had that problem on 84th Street already.
No, I understand. And like I said, it's definitely, we understand the challenge. We know it's not an easy feat, and you've got our commitments 100% to safety, and that's how we run all our jobs. And again, that's the most we're willing and we're really committed to do.
Okay, and then I don't know if you as the client have seen the little chat, but there seems to be some disgruntlement about the removal of the original substation. That ship sailed, as I understood. We tried very hard to find an adaptive reuse component for that. And now it's being carved up, and the sum of its parts are more valuable than the whole. So can you please address to this gentleman, Mr. Friedman, who believes that we haven't done our job as a community spokes group to try to protect that piece of preservation, or
Paige, actually, he's raised his hand, and so he'll have a chance to speak.
All right, I just don't want that to linger. I want that to be put to bed for once and for all, because we've been trying very hard as a community board to impress on the preservation aspect of that whole area. So I just don't want that to fall through the cracks. Thank you.
Okay, Rich.
Yeah, thanks. And I apologize, but will and I apologize, I can't really see the drawing, but will pedestrians always have access to the south sidewalk? Or will the south sidewalk ever be completely shut to pedestrians?
Richard, we don't foresee any interruptions, and again, it's part of also the city requirement and regulations. They wouldn't give us such permits to completely close the streets. And if in such events, there will be posts all over, but I don't foresee that.
So in this scenario where you're blocking, and the graphic is too small to see, but what would it be? The pedestrians would be walking out in the, what's now the parking lane?
Correct. So the pedestrian will be walking on the sidewalk and reroute it through the parking lane and back again to the sidewalk.
Okay, because if ever there were a time when pedestrians couldn't make it from one of your little flagmen to the other, that would be a huge problem because they would either have to walk back to West End or Broadway, which they wouldn't do, and they would potentially be trying to cross 96th Street mid-block, which would be tragic.
No, agreed. And like I said, it's we're staying within the city requirements, and that's not something that the city allows anyway without giving proper permits.
Okay, Mark, you raise your hand. Why don't you go? Then we'll go to the public.
Thank you. Just apropos of that, I wonder if it would be possible to have a flagman at Broadway rather than, or in addition to the ones that you've noted there. The reason is that sidewalk, the south sidewalk along that street, is a more direct access from the subway to PS 75. And so a flagman that could either suggest that they cross the street, which they might not otherwise do, or use 95th Street, which is another alternative point of entry for the school, might eliminate a lot of the conflicts that we're worried about, that Rich was just addressing and worried about. I wonder if that might be possible, especially during the periods where there's a lot of in and out of that construction site with trucks and so forth. And I want to add my voice to those who were thanking you for coming.
Mark, can I just jump in though and say that if we're forcing school children to cross 96th Street twice, that's a really suboptimal solution.
Understood, but we're talking about one suboptimal versus another. And maybe we need to do some work with respect to the youth coordinating officers of the 24th precinct to get a crossing guard at Broadway in addition to the one that's at West End. But it might be helped by having the recommendation I just.
Mark, I would say, Sufjan, I'd like you to address what Mark just talked about, but address it in terms of the timing that and the conversations you've had with 2551 Broadway, which is, I think, by the time, Mark, we get out of foundation and into superstructure, which is going to be approximately 4 to 6 months, 255 Broadway will have their side. They're going to be basically done with a lot of the work where the sidewalk will be, you will actually have a sidewalk, probably with a new bridge, and I know Sufjan has been talking to them, he's been coordinating this. They probably will have their new sidewalk with a nicer overhead protection that's going to be more of an advertisement, leading them to their front entrance, which is right up against our building. So they will actually be able to walk from Broadway on a sidewalk to our site, flagman through that area, and then flagman to the sidewalk to the school.
Yeah, that's kind of precisely why what I'm hoping to avoid. I'm sorry to take more time, but then right now that site right at Broadway with the 2555 property is not very inviting to pedestrians because it's so heavily under construction. Once they are closer to being finished, it's going to be inviting, and now you'll be halfway down the block before you realize that there's another obstruction. Having somebody up at Broadway to potentially reroute folks, and Rich is right, maybe going to 95th Street, staying on the same block is a better solution. But whatever way we point them, it would be better to do it at Broadway than halfway down 96th.
Mark, I think that there's assuming the sidewalk is restored on the 2551, there's a protected pedestrian lane adjacent to their building. I don't see the issue. I agree with Rich. It's much more problematic to have these kids keep crossing 96th Street back and forth. I think it's safer for them to walk down 96th Street on the south side, if that's where they're going to be, And I think that kids who go to the school, who come from the north, will may well decide on their own that they're better off going on the north side of 96. But remember, the subway entrance is on the south side. So you're gonna have kids going down that block no matter what. And we just have to assume that, like every other construction site in the city, there is a cordoned off, protected, Jersey barriered walking lane that I don't think presents a problem for vehicles. The only problem that might arise is buses pulling out, but even that, they're not going to be anywhere near the pedestrian lane.
Well, I think you all are raising good points, and I think it's hard to imagine that this construction site is going to be anything but a nightmare to implement or to endure for the community. This is my backyard, my front yard. Within 2 blocks from here, using the subway constantly. You have the schools. On Monday and Tuesday of this week, the construction site was doing something with the roadway and cranes, and during rush hour, early in the morning, horns were honking nonstop, like people were just laying on the horns because traffic was going nowhere. They had 2 traffic cops at 96th Street and a school crossing guard, and they couldn't keep traffic moving. And so there's just no easy answer here. But one thought that I would put to the construction manager and Fedner is, can we try to avoid doing that type of work during, the morning rush hour when kids are going to school, parents are dropping kids off, and everybody's trying to get to the subway? You have trucks, I imagine they're not coming on Weston or the highway because those aren't for commercial vehicles. So they're coming down Broadway, and then they're going to have to turn mid-block into the construction site. That's going to be really make a huge impact. And when those trucks turn, you're going to have your flagman having to stop the pedestrian flow. And I guess what Mark's saying is it would be easier if people didn't have to go halfway down the block and turn around, but I'm assuming that they're just pausing briefly until the truck pulls in. But it definitely, if you can do, I know it's more costly, some of this logistics at night or at least earlier or later than that morning, 7:30 to 9:30 when just it's chaos there as it is. I think that would be helpful. But let's go on to
Paige has her hand up. Paige?
Yep, thank you. Do we still have, this is a question to the community board. Penny used to be in charge of the construction coordination for this and would attend the meetings with the developer or their contractors. Do we still have that arrangement? So that Michelle, as our new district manager, would be able to perform that service so that we could keep track, because I think a log of what goes on and the complaints from the community, because there will be some, unfortunately. I think we should, if we don't have that in place, we should definitely consider putting that as one of Michelle's tasks.
Well, I definitely think we should raise it to Michelle, and I also think, we should raise it to DOT and say, what are you doing during these constructions? Because frankly, what happened earlier this week, well, I guess it's only Wednesday, but Monday and Tuesday was not acceptable. I mean, and that was just one construction project.
Right.
So I definitely think, unfortunately, we don't have the co-chairs of transportation, but we do have Rich. Oh no, I guess you're not there. But, I understand you're in a tough spot with this development site, and hopefully when it's done, we'll be happy that we have something that works well, but as much as you can help, coordinate, the better.
So
I think
let me
had
address- wait, can I-
what
can I- 1 second,
what
Richard,
Penny
please.
did.
Richard,
what
can
Penny,
I?
did was to we convened this, I forget what it was called, but it was like a community committee that would interface with the developer on a periodic basis. And Penny would act as a receptacle of any community complaints and would reach out to the developers.
It was our construction task force.
That's what it was, okay. But there would be periodic meetings of the construction task force with the developer, just so that the community knew what was coming up, what issues were going to arise, and how to deal with it. So I take
Richard,
it. Yeah.
Richard, this is Hal speaking.
Yeah.
If you recall, we actually agreed to be part of that.
I know you did.
Okay, and
Yeah.
so I don't know where it is with that, but here's what I can offer to you and Jeanette and to Paige who brought this up. We'll make it very easy. We are going to be leasing as our construction office, the little itty bitty office at that's right next to the site in the Stall building. So just to the right of that alleyway, there's
Right.
like 3 steps and it's an office.
Okay.
Okay. So Sufyan, who's on the call here, will make himself available at least once a month to meet with whoever you want him to meet with, to listen to what the issues are and, and help resolve them.
Good.
And if once a month turns out not to be enough, we can expand it, but we will make our staff available to the community. When I say to the community, this committee, I don't have the ability to answer every single person that walks in there, but we will take your comments and make Sufyan available to meet with you and help coordinate whatever issues you have.
All right, so we have to get our logistics in order, and we'll get.
Richard,
through it.
Richard,
Yeah.
can I explain what a CAG is? So normally, when we have a construction oversight committee, it's chaired by somebody from the construction company or the developer and either the district manager or the chair of Community Board 7. And specific people are invited to come to the meeting and it's open to the public.
Good, all right. So that, we'll deal with that. We'll get that started. And as long as we have a pledge from you that you'll cooperate, that's fine.
Okay, a few more questions here from the board and then we'll go to the community. Doug, you haven't spoken before.
Hi, thanks. So as a member of the executive team, I can certainly help to coordinate and make sure that Michelle Booker is available. Hal may not realize that we have a new district manager. Penny is no longer here, so Michelle is. We can certainly talk about that. And I am a member of the Transportation Committee. I just had a question on whether or not what we know in the timing of the Rotunda project, where we're going to have, I believe there's a period of time where their cars are going to be diverted or not be able to turn off on 79th and diverted to 96. Just if we know the timing of that, because I'm afraid it could be a compounding effect. I think we should be preventative to mitigate what could be an awful traffic jam. And obviously,
Doug, DOT will coordinate that with the community board and with Fetner.
yeah, and right. So we should certainly be aware of what's happening because I think we can take preventative measures. It's, if 79th Street is completely shut and it's the only thing we have is 96, we want to mitigate that and get ahead of it, So thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Rich, you had one more, your hand is still up. Did you have another question?
Nope, sorry.
Okay. Roberta, your hand is up. Did you have another question?
No, sorry about that.
Okay, then let's go to the public. I just see one person, Mark Friedman, so you should be allowed to speak now. Ask your questions.
Thank you. How many members of the public are listening into this Zoom today? Is there a way to tell?
I can tell you the total number of participants is 22.
For some reason, every time I ask a question, I get an answer to a different question. How many members of the public that you represent, the public people, myself as an example, are on this call today?
If you
Well,
subtract,
what the shows, it shows how many like right now, because you're speaking, you're an attendee. I mean, you want to know how many attendees? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 attendees that aren't panelists. But right now, I guess because you're speaking, you're a panelist.
Okay.
No, he's still an attendee.
That's a fair answer. I'm glad we got that. The second question, have you all received a copy of the email that I send to all the email addresses I could find on CB7's website and on the email address that Mark Diller himself gave me? Did you receive my email?
I have not.
I did not receive an email.
So let me cut to my chase here.
And I gave you that email address at the beginning of this meeting. So let's be clear that that wasn't given in advance.
Let's pause and check then, because without being able to communicate with the committee, it's very difficult to communicate with the committee. But if
let's just deal with that right now.
Yeah.
If you have a message that you want to communicate to a committee of the community board, you send the message to the community board. I assume you have their email address. And
right.
She and Michelle Booker, who's our district manager, will circulate it.
So then you have it.
But also
I
the
don't
floor
have
is
it.
yours right now, and you have the ability to communicate with us. You're using up.
I don't have it.
Okay, so then I'll talk about something else.
If you have
In general, okay, let me ask the general question. Does the land use committee have a set of principles like we should protect social services and not replace it with expensive condos? We should not take this neighborhood and change it, the whole characteristic, by eliminating the social services and replacing it with condos. Is that a kind of a?
Okay, Mark, our principles are on our website. What we have before us tonight is not a project looking for approval from the community board. It is a project where the developer has decided to come to the community board and share what's going on. We have no vote here, just to share what's going on so that we can give him some local knowledge and advise him on how to make this a little less impactful on the project.
Perfect. So then the developer showed you his project. You asked a simple question. Is it possible to change the hours of the construction, as that would be an impact on the disruption and potential safety in this community? What was the answer?
Well, let's ask that question again because we didn't get an answer.
You know, Jeanette?
Yes.
We're not going to debate this with Mr. Friedman. All right, I'm just not going to debate this with Mr. Friedman. I would simply ask Mr. Friedman, how many times this board has met with the condo developer to the east versus how many times I have met with this committee and been transparent and tried to.
Hal, you're not being helpful.
All right, well.
The question was, will you be willing to adjust your construction schedule to account for possible traffic problems?
Richard, are you?
And I
Richard,
thought
if
your answer
if I'm going to
was-
be asked to do that, we're going to go to DOB and
Right.
ask for a night permit.
Right.
Okay, which you're not going to be happy about. So
I understand
need to
that.
I need to get 8 hours of work in.
That's why we have the
Okay.
task force that we talked about.
Right.
Right. I appreciate that you can't answer the question in advance because you don't know what DOT is going to say or DOB. But I think the gist of the question is will you be amenable to community complaints about traffic issues that arise during the course of construction?
We will have to review it at that time.
Actually, Richard, the question that I asked is I think we as a community board need to go to DOT and ask that they don't allow major disruptive service like crane
Yeah,
or
fine.
concrete pouring or something during those early hours of like 8 a.m. or 7:30 to 9:30, when 96th Street is my street. I mean, I'm on 98, but when everybody's taking their kids to school, everybody's trying to get on the subway to come to and from work, and it's just crazy. And we need to have that conversation with DOT. We raised it to the developer here so that they're aware that that is a major concern of the community board, and we're going to bring it to DOT. But it's not something that they just can change the hours easily. I understand that you need your 8 hours, and they're trade-offs. If you're working at 11 o'clock at night, the people who live on 96th Street are not going to be happy with that noise and the lights and everything.
It's like the city.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that's your answer, Mr. Friedman. Did you have any other specific questions to this site as far as community board procurement and correspondence? We can discuss that after the developer's presentation.
Well, I can clarify one question that I had put in the chat. I was less concerned with preserving the aesthetics of the power station, because personally, I am so far beyond aesthetics. I am at safety, I am at poverty, I am at the level, not for myself, but in the community. Those are the issues. The aesthetics are not so much the issue. So when I asked the question about...
Let me address what I understood your question to be, which is why is there not a social service use for this space? That was your basic question, right?
Of any of the spaces.
Right. And the answer is, as I understand it, that the city has decided, and with some support from us, that a valid use of this space is to include a substantial, a very large number of affordable units. And, you know, that may not be what you like, it may not be what someone else likes, it may be what a lot of people like, but it is certainly within the realm of reason to devote a new construction site in large measure to affordable housing. In order to do that, a developer has to have a substantial number of units that are market rate housing. But that was a trade-off that HPD decided was worthwhile, and that we decided HPD was not wrong about.
And I'll tell you my view on that. It's not what you think.
And by the way, the ship has already sailed on that.
That's fine. I want to present my view because you people have a view that you're making decisions. That's why I'm asking about principles, views, because they need to be questioned sometimes as I question my own views. What's happening here is that the services are being taken from the poor and the people who need it most. And the trade-off, as you call it, is for the middle class to get affordable housing so that the college graduates can start their career in New York City. You're literally stealing from the poor to pay. And, you know, it's, please, everyone, just sleep on it. I'm not even having a debate. I'm having you think about the community.
Okay,
There's
Mr. Friedman.
a poor community in this community.
Thank you. We'll sleep on it.
Thank you for your comments. I will say, though, the site is not currently used for social services. There is a
The building is owned by HPD. Enough of this talk. Thank you.
Well, we're going to sleep on your.
Thank you.
We're gonna consider what you said, and we're going to sleep on it as you asked us to do.
But if I may, I would also say that, you know, you put in the comments, oh, well, poor people shop at Salvation Army, we're taking that away. That's ridiculous. I've been there numerous times, and there's also the church thrift shop a block away, and there's also Housing Works. So you're making assumptions and you're accusing us of making assumptions. I appreciate your value points here. We share some of them. But I think right now we're trying to talk about specific issues related to the construction of this building. And so now I think we should move on.
Are there any other
Any
public
other-
speakers?
I think that's it. So.
All right, well, the Fetners, thank you very much for the presentation. We hope that you understood our concerns. We hope that during the course of construction, as problems arise, which they inevitably will,
Always accessible.
that you'll be amenable to trying to work them out so that a minimum of inconvenience to the community.
Well, thank you for inviting us, and we found this session really productive, and we hope you did as well. And moving forward, you know, as we discussed, we are always available and open to meeting more and, you know, hearing any problems or considerations that you have throughout the construction process.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good
I
night.
appreciate it. Good night.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks all.
So Richard,
Yeah.
did you want to discuss scaffolding?
Yeah, look, I think, I don't know that we need to have a long discussion tonight. My, clear impression, walking around the West Side and living where I do, is that local law 10, which was enacted after some brickwork fell on and killed a woman up near Columbia about 20, 30 years ago.
No,
Yes.
about 5 years ago.
No, well, the original local law 10 was a long, long time ago.
Oh.
But it has resulted in owners keeping the scaffolding up as a cheaper alternative to refacing their facades. Because they rent the scaffolding, but it's a lot cheaper than hiring people to re-cement their bricks and replace their bricks and whatever else they do. And it just seems to me, and I don't think we can do anything about it tonight because we have to do some research. It's something that we ought to think about as to whether it's legal for them to do that, and B, whether it should be legal and whether we should propose legislation to impose some kind of fine or other monetary incentive so that developers don't have an incentive to keep these scaffolds up forever.
So, Richard, I would just add, though, I know my good friends, their church, Lutheran, on 100th Street next to the library. They've had scaffolding up for a number of years because they don't have money to fix their windows.
Okay.
It's not always just developers keeping it up. There's other reasons, and I'm sure some of it, the cases are because there isn't money to do the repairs that are needed.
I don't know that it's a question of not money or they don't want to spend money. You can always borrow.
Well,
but it's something, I mean, I understand what you're saying and there are hardships and I understand that, but I don't think there's a hardship at 350 Central Park West, which has 160 apartments.
Probably
and it's
not.
a rental. All right. It's just, and there are, we've heard complaints over the years about people who just are tired of these scaffolds. Shelley.
I think there's another aspect of the scaffold piece that some of them are do not create a safe environment, particularly in the evening, nighttime, and others that are, there's more than a scaffold. There's other blockages making it relatively unsafe. So I think if we're going to look at that scaffolding, we should look at all aspects that may be negative, affecting people in our community.
Roberta, then Paige.
So I worked with Andrew Ritchie and Ben Kalos on some legislation a few years ago. And the problem is, there are major problems to create legislation. Sometimes the building owner is derelict, and without the scaffolding, stuff would fall down. We need more inspectors at DOB. We need to have a process where the scaffolding is inspected, where buildings, who are derelict. Like my building is a co-op, and we don't want the scaffolding up too long because we have to pay for it. So we're very careful about it, but I know there are a lot of buildings with a lot of problems, and Ben worked really hard on getting this legislation through, and it just never really worked out.
All right, well, let's follow that up and see what the problem was and whether we can resurrect. Paige, and then Louisa, and then Erica.
The issue is, Roberta sort of touched on it, and I'm aware of the council members' legislation, but you have to realize you're dealing with landmark buildings, non-landmark buildings, current buildings, local law 10 and 11 inspections that are supposed to happen at certain times. And a lot of it is a log jam. It starts at the Department of Buildings. I'm not laying it at their feet because they don't have enough inspectors, as Roberta said, to go and look out at the different categories of potential violations for these buildings. They also, if you notice, what worries me more than anything as an architect, and Peter could probably support this, they never climb on the scaffolding. They're always doing observation about the connection of the netting, but not how it's actually affixed to the building itself, which is, again, a problem with the way our country decides to mothball projects. I have firsthand experience because our practice got involved with a historic building on Canal Street. It had scaffolding up for something like 25 years, and it pulled the facade off in the street. And the only person who didn't get hurt, only one person was there who didn't get hurt, was a junkie who was so out of his mind that the bricks sort of bounced off him. But the thing is, the legislation and the purchase of the building, it took 2.5 years once the mess was cleaned up and they reattached the original scaffolding back to be able to take down the facade and put it back. So it's not simply a negligent issue. It's not always a safety issue. And yes, sometimes they're the deadbeat landlords and they have to go find them, because they've got shell corporations that hide who's ultimately responsible. But I think we should go back to Ben Kalos and look at his legislation and see if there's a way that we can enhance it so that the inspectors, and maybe this goes into our, what is it, Roberta, you're working on the our needs statement and
Our NS and our capital budget.
Our capital budget. And maybe what we should do is start asking for a certain amount of money so that our community can take the lead and we have money to pull off a certain number of DOB inspectors who can start doing their job properly in an orderly format and tell us which buildings are at risk. I think that
we don't even need inspectors if the issue is scaffolding being up too long with no work being done. We can do what Texas did. We can empower people to notify the Department of Buildings and impose a fine unless the landlord explains why he needs to have his scaffolding up so long.
Yes, but you still need to have it inspected. There's no point. You can't point and say that screw looks like it's loose. Let's give him a violation.
That's a separate issue from the.
There's so many permits that I have with certain clients for preservation, just a sidewalk bridge that they've got up. And the problem is the DOB isn't keeping up with it. They don't have enough people to
No,
regulate.
they're overworked.
Exactly, Peter.
But there is a problem that doesn't require significant inspection. And that is if a scaffolding is up more than X number of months, there should be a presumption that it's being abused. And it should be up to the landlord to explain why his scaffolding is there. And if he can't explain it, he should be fined. But, but I agree with you, Paige. We ought to start with Kalos's legislation. Do you have a copy of it?
Somewhere, I'll dig it out and send
Can
it.
you
through.
just send it over?
Mark just put in the link in the chat.
It's in the
Okay,
chat. Yeah.
great. But here, just to defend the owners here, they may not, as Roberta said, there are circumstances where the money may not be coming. There won't give them the money for that, only for permanent improvements. There's so many loopholes with the city, and no one wants to touch this because of that woman. I was at Columbia University when that piece of stone, the day it happened, I was on the other opposite side of the street, and nobody knew where the noise came from. It was horrific. But luckily they're very few. But the thing is, no one takes responsibility, and the owner of the building can't, because it's on the public thoroughfare. There's so much wrong with how we do our, quote, safety factors.
Okay, so.
And it won't be settled overnight or at one meeting. Just brace yourself.
You agree it's worthwhile for the committee to look at?
I do. And I think the other thing is we need to reach out to both structural engineers and architects through the AIA and their professional organizations, because they deal with this every single day they start a new project.
I actually know the architect who does many of these bridges, at least on the Upper West Side. Maybe I can reach out to him.
Get him to join. Maybe what do we call ourselves? It's not a special group, but a think tank or something of people who want to participate to see what there are a lot of interconnected issues, and it's all going to go back to insurance.
We can call ourselves the shedders. The shedders. We'll call ourselves the shedders.
The shedders. Okay, sounds cute.
Louisa?
Yeah. Okay. I think that to start with, we can't make it too complicated because the perfect destroys the good. What we need, and I was under the impression that DOB actually had put a time cap on sheds. And that at a certain point, because they got too many complaints, there's one up in Harlem that I think has been up for 20 years. So I think they put on a cap. So I'd like to know what this cap consists of. This is very different from what City Council is doing. This is very, very practical.
Yeah.
What the cap consists of, and once the cap is reached, what is required of the building, the owner, etc. Just start with that first, because that's something that we can possibly influence, and certainly we would at least add to our knowledge.
Louisa, if you can find that, in the DOB regs, let me know, and I'll look also. All right.
I'd be happy to.
Okay. Erica.
Hi, sorry about that. So the assembly member, and I'll share it with you guys, we just got a response from DOB about a letter that the assembly member wrote back over the summer about a building that since I think 2014 or whatever has had scaffolding up. And one of the things they mentioned, let me just pull it up. It was that it should be noted that the department increased penalties by rule for buildings greater than 6 stories in height where unsafe facade conditions are not addressed, resulting in a sidewalk shed from place for multiple years. These penalties start at $1,000 per month, with additional penalties being imposed per month for each foot of linear shed. And so I don't think that's the first, I mean, that's not really, I don't know if that's really a thing that is enforced all the time, or are they, as you know, I agree that, you know, that there's a lack of, or a shortage of inspectors. And so I don't know how they go out all the time and do this each month, or because the building that we were working with, they definitely were not fined. They were fined $10,000 now. After we had inspectors go out, but it wasn't like you know, it hadn't been a thing before. And so the assembly member wanted to have a larger conversation with DOB about this, just using this one, you know, one building as an example, and I can share the letter with you guys.
Yeah. Let's do that. Let's coordinate it. Obviously, a $1,000 a month fine doesn't seem to have much of an impact. We may have to consider whether it should be significantly higher.
Yeah, no, I agree. Just wanted to share that with you guys. And so they literally just responded yesterday.
Roberta?
Okay.
So one of the problems we have is once we've completed the work that we need to do in our building, DOB takes a very long time to approve that we've completed the work.
Yep.
We can take the sidewalk shed and the all the materials down. So that needs to be improved as well.
Right. Absolutely.
So, you know, we completed a work about 2 years ago, and it took 6 months before we could get all of our stuff down. So
really the question tonight, is it a project we want to work on?
Yes.
So yes. And here's my second question. As chair of the Budget and Strategy Committee, I was talking with somebody earlier tonight. Do we want to put in that we need that we need funds for more inspectors for DOB to start looking at sidewalk sheds and scaffolding to see what shape it's in? Because
if you can put it in there, that would be great.
We're delighted to do that. It won't get in the top 20, but it will get in the lower.
No, it should be the #1 priority.
Well, we've already voted, so it's too late.
It's all right.
Blow it.
Thanks, Roberta. Anybody else? Jeanette, are we ready to?
Yeah, I had a few things to say. Also, there was a comment in the chat from a Susan Weisswasser, who seems to be interested in this topic. I don't know if she wants to speak. But my comments are, number one, just I'm jaded, but I think DOB is a completely broken agency. And I think that when you get down to it, this is an issue similar to the after hours variances, where it's a matter of incentives. And for DOB, their incentive, to their credit, they care about avoiding injuries and fatalities like we've had. But there's no incentive for them to try to get building owners to remove scaffolding.
That's right.
As long as they're keeping people safe, it can stay there for decades as long as they care.
And in part, I mean, it is true that there aren't enough inspectors. Somewhere I read a week or so ago that all these super talls, none of them have final CFOs.
CFOs, that's right.
Yeah. Well, and also,
only because inspectors haven't been able to get out there and do their job.
But they're also, when they do issue fines, they don't collect them. They just have buildings with tons of fines on them, and the fines are meaningless, especially if you can still get certificates of occupancy, you can still get new permits, even if you have tens of thousands of dollars worth of fines.
Yep. What we need are community board members to physically go out and dismantle these sheds.
Right.
Or to change the law.
Ellie?
Yeah, just one quick comment, how this has been affecting the children of the West Side for generations now. That when kids have to draw a picture of a building,
right,
it doesn't look like the building. It looks like a building above with a shed in front of the entrance with difficulty to distinguish the entrance. So it's affecting our children's creations and drawings.
It's like that artist, the guy who built the fences in Central Park. What was his name?
Right, right.
I had a
Okay.
plan that you had a list of where all the sidewalk sheds were. So on a rainy day, you knew where to walk. So you could walk under all the sidewalks,
Absolutely.
not get wet.
I've gotten through rain and snow unscathed many times.
It's like global warming. There is an upside to global warming. But I think the overwhelming downside here is, something we need to address. Mark, did you have?
Yeah, just to add one more facet to it, I'm thinking of the one-time Extell building that was planned for 65th, 66th Street.
Yeah.
Which is a hole in the ground that hasn't had construction activity for, I believe, over 2 years now. And of course, they still occupy. There's still sidewalk closures and so forth around that. I think there's still a crane there that hasn't moved except for the inspections. So maybe that could be part of this same inquiry. I'm not sure, or maybe that's overcomplicating it.
The crane is down.
Wasn't that the subject of litigation?
It is, but the crane is down.
Well, the litigation was resolved. Well, some of it's still ongoing, right?
No, I'm talking about litigation over the crane.
No.
Well, the crane is down.
Okay.
Well, regardless, we know that real estate is so expensive that if a site is just sitting fallow for a couple of years, it's deep in litigation. And so any regulation or rule that the city has isn't going to help because everybody's suing everybody.
Mark, anybody else? Doug.
I just wanted to chime in and just say that, that the scaffolding is a major issue in commercial and retail real estate. It's major. And to a point where it's become onerous, it becomes additional provisions in a lease now. And we've had to delineate between elective work and non-elective work and when the scaffolding can go up, and, more savvy tenants, to their credit, and if they have a broker representing them, we try to make sure that there are provisions in the lease, but it is extremely difficult. And in all fairness to an owner, they don't also know when they're going to be required to. And I represent some co-op boards that aren't flush with money, that need to do the work, that know that they have to give a discount to their retailers, or even if they don't have to give a discount, they don't want to lose them, they don't want to hurt them, and they're waiting for inspectors. And it's an everyday occurrence. So it
sounds like a worthwhile project. There are several arms to it. There's enforcement. There's protection of building owners who are not getting inspection. There's Paige's point about the safety of these sheds, and I think we ought to everybody think about how we should approach it. Louisa, you're going to get whatever the legislation was that you referred to.
Maybe Ben Kalos could come in November.
I think that'd be a great idea because he has a lot of information. Also, be aware that there are two types of scaffolding. There's the pipe scaffolding and the one that they call the parasol, which is the arched ones, which jack it up higher, which address some of the commercial issues so that you can see more of the facade of the building and the logo, or at least the signage. That was one of the impetuses. So that's something else.
And we should invite Andrew Ritchie as well. So we should invite Ben Kalos and Andrew Ritchie.
All right. Well, Jeanette and I will try to work out the logistics.
Excellent.
Seems the longer we go, the more this gets scaffolded.
Yeah, I was actually going to say.
Shut up.
I think that it's such a large issue. It might help us if we were to narrow it down, and maybe we should be thinking about, as an initial step, better posting on the scaffolding, how long it's supposed to be up for, who the contact person is, or when scaffolding starts to really be dilapidated, that it needs to be repaired or repainted or posters. There's also an art program that
I think both Andrew.
Roberta, 1 second. one second, Roberta. There's also an art program that DOT approved, but it has to go only through these two different groups that can paint scaffolding, like put art on it. So there may be other directions that because we can't come up with something that's going to relate to every single type of scaffolding issue and litigation out there.
But we can explore them and see what we can do.
Somebody has added to the chat that there, I think this came from Susan Weiswasser, that there is a map that you can get of where all the sidewalk sheds are. So I suggest.
That would be very useful.
Yeah, so I'm copying that down and I can.
Okay, yeah, I see a link.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
And,
our local electeds and Andrew Ritchie and Ben can also be helpful. Linda Rosenthal's been involved, and some our other electeds have been involved. So
all right, look, let's give us some thought. Everybody give us some thought. Anybody has any ideas, let Jeanette and me know. And we'll continue in November to address it.
Excellent, excellent.
Anybody in the mood for dinner?
Yes, let's eat dinner.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Before you go, Mark,
One thing.
before Mark and Richard go, I totally forgot and didn't take notes or note who present or not. So I don't know if you have that by who signed on that you can
I can
print.
get that for you.
Well,
Okay.
After the meeting, I can get that for you.
Yeah, okay.
Do you need notes for the presentation?
No, I don't know. Rich usually does a nice first draft and then I just clean it up a little bit. I don't know if he's willing to do that since he came in late, but.
I mean, I think the minutes are going to be for the first part of the meeting.
Short and sweet.
There was a presentation by the developer as to their construction plans, the location of the bus layover, the location of the bus stop, plans for pedestrian walkways, and the committee and the developer agreed to participate in what do you call it, community task force?
And construction oversight task force.
Okay, and then as to this discussion about the sheds, I'm just going to say, that we had an initial discussion. Everyone agreed that there are numerous issues with sidewalk sheds that need to be addressed, and we're going to develop a plan for how to address it.
Right, so Mark, if you can just do the attendees, that would be helpful. So
Yeah, I'll get that for you. I may have to wait till tomorrow because they don't generate it right away, but I'll get it to you.
Please, tomorrow is more than soon enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think, by the way, William Ortiz is on our committee and he hasn't attended a single meeting. I'm going to tell him that he's got to do the minutes.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for
All right.
participating and enjoy your dinner.
Thanks, guys.
I have excuse me, I have
Okay.
something.
Wait, Doug.
But I can speak to you offline. It's regarding a letter that Gail Brewer wrote recently about some of these dark markets, and I wanted to know if land use wants to opine on it or discuss it. But I can talk to you offline.
What is a dark market?
Dark markets are the grocery delivery businesses that are proliferating all over.
Like Grubhub and.
No, they are companies.
Gorilla.
Yeah, it's one of them. Yep. There's about 10 of them. And what I'll do is, in the interest of time and everybody wants to get their dinner, I'll forward the article in the letter that Gail wrote. There's an article about it in the letter of concern, which is very much, I think, in the purview of this committee.
Yeah, you can't see inside. They deliver for however they arrange it within 10 minutes. And it's not like a regular market where you go in and you do your marketing.
What's the problem?
Well, there's a question. The thing that's in question is whether or not it is even conforms to zoning, because it's a fulfillment center. It's not
I'm sorry, it's a what?
It's essentially a fulfillment center or distribution center. It is not open, these stores are not open to the public, but they are leaking. So in full disclosure, I work for a company, I do not represent any of these, but you will see them, they're ubiquitous. There have been multiple leases signed in our neighborhood, at least 6 that I know of, maybe more. I just don't know how they're all going to compete with each other. But Gail Brewer recently had an opinion about it and wrote a letter to DOB and copied some other.
Why don't you send us a letter, send it around.
I'm curious to see it. I think they're production centers.
I have a question. Are these things regulated like supermarkets where you're supposed to check the temperature on the fish freezer versus the ice cream freezer, or the produce isn't?
No.
I would sure hope so, because they are selling thousands of items. Some are perishable and some are not. I'm sorry, Louisa, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm sorry. This is like manufacturing. This is like the person who starts making cookies in their kitchen and then finally moves to a building and makes cookies and then delivers to people. Why not?
No, what it is these are major companies that are tremendously financially backed, that are basically going to be, the other challenge I think that Gail mentioned is that this concern that there will be unfairly competing with bodegas and other supermarkets.
Why is it unfair?
Well, that's debatable, but that, that they,
It sounds to me like they're delivery and distribution centers, and they're locating retail space that are not going to be very sightly because they're not open to the public. And they're going to have a lot of logistics, whether they're delivering on foot or by bike or by car, I don't know, or truck.
Where in our community, just if we wanted to look at it, where would
102nd and Broadway.
Yes, and also 72nd, 102nd and Broadway. There's 2 of them that have opened. One on either side of this street. One is, I believe, called Gorilla. The other one is, I don't know if it's GoPuff. So there's a company called GoPuff. There's a company called Gorilla. There's a company called Bike, B-U-Y-K. There's a company called Joker, J-O-K-R. I understand DoorDash is getting involved.
what do the storefronts look like?
They pretty much paper them over.
Yeah, you can't see inside.
That issue is within our bailiwick.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of benefit to it, right? So I'm agnostic about it. But because it was brought up by by Gail, and I wanted to know what this committee thought about it, and pro con.
Send it to us.
Yep, we'll do.
I'm glad you brought it up, Doug, because I wasn't aware of it, but I've seen those names everywhere and I didn't realize what they were. And then just today I got a flyer from somebody, delivery, and I was like, but the solution is just, we all have to go back to the grocery store and stop having everything delivered to our doorstep. Right? Then we'll have shops on the street.
No, but they may be illegal.
That boat is sailed.
They're also, a couple of them are selling alcohol without an SLA license.
Okay.
So it's DOH, it's a various buildings department and then streetscape, but let's put this on next month's agenda and figure out who it makes sense. Maybe it's just Gail's office speaking to us.
Okay.
I look forward to seeing that letter, Doug.
Yeah.
From Gail.
I will send it. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.